It was one of those mornings where the world felt heavier than usual. Rain-slicked streets, the smell of wet asphalt in the air, and the kind of chill that seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. Emma tugged her oversized hoodie tighter around her shoulders and shuffled toward the campus cafe. Her stomach growled, but not because she was hungry. She was used to that, but because she knew she barely had enough money for her textbooks this month, let alone a cup of coffee. She hated mornings like this. Mornings that made her feel small, invisible, like she was constantly running in place while everyone else sprinted ahead. Her part-time job at the library barely covered her rent, let alone tuition. But somehow, she always tried to find little ways to keep herself going. A good cup of coffee, a smile from a stranger, tiny things that reminded her that life wasn't all crushing weight and disappointment. That's why, when she noticed the man in line behind her fumbling with his wallet, she didn't hesitate. "Would you like me to grab your coffee?" she asked, barely thinking. It was impulsive, yes, maybe even reckless, given how tight her own budget was. But something about the way he looked, tired, distracted, like the world was pressing down on him too, made her want to help. She had always believed that small kindnesses mattered, that even a stranger's smile or a shared gesture could change a day, maybe even a life. The man blinked, surprised. Then he smiled. A real smile, the kind that reaches your eyes and somehow warms your chest. "Are you sure?" he asked. Emma nodded, trying to hide the flutter of nerves in her stomach. She swiped the card for both coffees, thanked the barista, and handed him his cup. He nodded again, muttering a quiet, "Thanks," and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Emma watched him go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and a twinge of worry. She had just spent the last of her money on someone she didn't even know. Her stomach twisted. How was she going to get through the rest of the week? The thought made her walk a little faster, shoulders hunched against the drizzle, mind racing through her dwindling options. But then, something strange happened. A few hours later, she got an email from a sender she didn't recognize. She frowned. The subject line made her heart skip a beat. "Tuition assistance, for you." She clicked it, eyes widening as she read the first line. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Then, as she scrolled, her hands shook, her breath caught, and a single thought slammed into her brain. This could actually change everything. But just as she was about to click reply, a sudden knock on her dorm room door made her jump. Who could it be? And what did it mean for her already fragile world? The truth was, Emma had no idea that a simple act of kindness that morning was about to turn her life upside down, and in a way she never could have imagined. Emma sank onto the edge of her bed, the email open on her laptop, her fingers frozen above the keyboard. She had never received anything like this before. She had grown up in a small apartment with peeling paint, a mother working double shifts at the diner, and a younger brother who idolized her even when she felt like she barely had anything to give. College had always been her dream, a way to escape the constant struggle and prove that she could do something meaningful with her life. But dreams came with a price. Tuition bills, textbooks, rent, groceries, it all piled up faster than her paycheck. She worked every evening at the campus library, stacking shelves, stamping books, answering questions, barely leaving enough time to eat, let alone sleep. Some nights, she studied under the dim glow of a single desk lamp, her brain buzzing with exhaustion and worry. And yet, she kept going. She kept believing that hard work, determination, and a little luck would eventually pay off. Her friends at school didn't know the half of it. They saw a cheerful, quiet girl always willing to help, always laughing at the right time, never complaining. Even her professors thought she was dedicated and focused. No one knew about the nights she cried herself to sleep after realizing she couldn't afford the lab fee or that one required textbook. No one knew that sometimes she skipped meals to make sure her brother had breakfast. That morning at the cafe had been impulsive, yes, but it also reflected who Emma really was. She had learned early that the world didn't always care about struggles, but small acts of kindness mattered, even if no one noticed. She had no idea that the man she bought coffee for had quietly observed her calm in the chaos, her generosity in the face of scarcity. He hadn't said much, but there was something about her, something that made him pause and remember that the world wasn't all about rushing and taking. Now, sitting with the email in front of her, she felt a mix of disbelief and hope. The message was formal, yet strangely warm. explaining that someone had offered to cover her tuition for the semester. Emma read the words over and over, trying to convince herself this wasn't a prank, some cruel mistake. She thought about her mother's worn hands, her brother's eager face, and the endless nights of struggle. Could this really be real? Could someone's kindness ripple back into her life in a way that changed everything? Her mind raced with possibilities, but also with questions. Who had done this? Why? How did they even know her? And most importantly, what did she owe them? Emma closed her laptop slowly, heart still racing. Outside, the campus hummed with life, students rushing between classes, laughing, complaining, living their worlds as if hers didn't exist. And yet, something had shifted. Something unseen had entered her life, and she knew, deep down, that the coming days would be unlike anything she had ever faced. She didn't know it yet, but the simple act of buying a stranger a cup of coffee had set off a chain of events that would push her to confront choices, trust, and the kind of generosity that could change a life forever. But as she lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling, there was one nagging thought she couldn't shake. What if this kindness came with strings attached? The next few days were a blur for Emma. Every time she opened her email, she half expected the tuition message to vanish, some digital trick mocking her hope. But it was still there, calm and unwavering. She couldn't stop thinking about the stranger, the man at the cafe, whose face she barely remembered, yet whose kindness had turned her entire week upside down. Her friends noticed a change. Emma, normally composed and practical, now seemed distracted, jittery, like she was holding a secret too big to share. During library shifts, her hands shook slightly as she sorted books, her mind replaying the email over and over. Could this really be a gift from the stranger? Or was it some scam designed to lure her into a mistake she couldn't afford? She tried to focus on classes, but her lectures felt hollow. Words like photosynthesis and quantum theory floated past her, meaningless against the whirlwind in her head. Even her carefully planned budget no longer made sense. How could she plan when someone else seemed to be rewriting her reality without warning? Then came the first hint that maybe this gift wasn't as simple as it seemed. She received another email, brief and almost cryptic. Meet me tomorrow. 4 p.m. Cafe by the fountain. Her stomach flipped. Who was this person? How did they know where she would be? And why did the message feel more like an instruction than a friendly gesture? A million scenarios ran through her mind, some thrilling, some terrifying. Emma spent the night tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, imagining a stranger waiting for her, watching her. Was this truly someone offering help, or someone who wanted something in return? Could she trust a life-changing gesture from a person she barely knew? Morning came too quickly. She tried to eat breakfast, but her appetite had vanished. Every step to campus felt heavier than the last, her mind racing with doubts, hopes, and a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. As she approached the fountain cafe, she froze. The stranger wasn't there yet, but she could feel a presence, an energy in the air that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She wasn't sure if it was excitement, dread, or both. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed movement, a shadow slipping behind a tree just beyond the fountain. She blinked, heart pounding, and realized someone was waiting. And suddenly, she wondered if this meeting was exactly what it seemed, or if it was the start of something she couldn't escape. Emma's heart hammered as she stepped closer to the fountain cafe. The morning sun glinted off the wet pavement, but it did little to chase away the chill crawling up her spine. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but something stronger, curiosity, maybe hope, kept her rooted to the spot. The shadow shifted again. Emma's eyes widened. Her mind raced through every possible scenario. A scam, a stalker, or the stranger? The man who had accepted her small gesture of kindness so casually, yet now seemed to have orchestrated something impossible. She took a slow breath, trying to steady herself, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. Then she saw him. Not the shadow, not a figure in the distance, but the man from the cafe. He stood near the fountain, casually sipping a cup of coffee as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but his eyes, sharp, attentive, almost piercing, were fixed on her. The familiar warmth of his smile from that morning was gone, replaced by something unreadable. Emma approached, her steps careful and measured. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emma," he replied, and her heart skipped. The way he said her name, it was deliberate, calm, measured, as if he had been preparing for this moment as carefully as she had dreaded it. He gestured toward the empty table near the fountain. She sat, hands fidgeting, eyes darting between him and the fountain's glistening water. "I assume you received my email," he said, his tone neutral, but with an edge that made her stomach drop. "I did," she whispered. I still don't understand why." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back, studying her like a scientist observing a rare phenomenon. "You didn't ask for help," he finally said. "You offered it. To a stranger. That's rare." Emma blinked. She wanted to ask why he had chosen her, why he knew her schedule, why he seemed so present, but the words caught in her throat. "Most people don't notice the little things," he continued, voice low. "But you noticed. That's why I'm here." Her chest tightened. Something about his calm, calculated presence made her both nervous and oddly safe. But there was an undercurrent, something she couldn't identify, a tension that prickled at her skin and whispered that this encounter was more than it seemed. Then he leaned forward slightly, eyes locking onto hers. "What I'm about to offer you isn't just tuition. It's a chance, but it comes with conditions. Things you might not be ready for." Emma's throat went dry. Her mind raced. Conditions? What could that mean? She felt a mix of hope and dread, the kind that twists your stomach into knots and makes every second feel unbearably long. A gust of wind rippled through the plaza, carrying the distant murmur of students, laughter, footsteps, normal life. But around them, time seemed suspended, as if the world was holding its breath. Emma opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. And in that suspended moment, she realized that this was the point of no return. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. Emma's mind raced as she stared at the man across from her, trying to process what he had just said. Conditions? What could possibly make a tuition gift complicated? Before she could speak, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then his eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "I didn't expect this so soon," he muttered. Emma's heart thudded. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then leaned closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. "You're not the only one I've been watching helping. And someone else, someone dangerous, is noticing now. They don't like it when I interfere." Emma felt her stomach drop. The kind, mysterious stranger who had offered her hope was being hunted. And by the sound of it, she might be next. Her hands trembled. Tuition and opportunity suddenly felt meaningless next to the threat looming over her, over him, over both of them. The fountain's water shimmered in the morning light, but it felt like a warning now. Emma realized, with a sudden, sickening clarity, that her life was about to spiral far beyond anything she had imagined. And just as she opened her mouth to protest, the man's expression changed, sharp, tense, urgent. Something was coming, something they couldn't see yet. Emma's breath caught as the man's warning sank in. Someone dangerous. Someone watching. Her mind flashed to every stranger in the plaza, every shadow slipping between buildings, every face she'd ignored in the crowd. "We need to move," he said abruptly, standing and grabbing her hand. The sudden contact made her stomach flutter, not with affection, but with fear. Together, they darted down a narrow alley behind a cafe, the hum of the city fading into tense silence. Emma's pulse raced with every step. Her chest felt tight, her legs trembling, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't turn back now. They reached a small, secluded courtyard. The man pressed her against the wall, scanning the entrance. "They're close," he muttered. "If they find you, it won't just be your tuition on the line. It could ruin everything, your safety, your future, even your life." Emma's mind spun. This wasn't about money anymore. This was survival. She wanted to scream, to ask why she was caught up in this. Why a simple cup of coffee had pulled her into a storm she didn't understand. But the man's eyes, steady, calm, unwavering, grounded her. Then, the distant sound of footsteps snapped them both alert. The man's hand tightened around hers. "You have to trust me. Whatever happens next, stay close." A figure appeared at the courtyard entrance, shadowed and imposing. Emma's stomach sank, fear clawing at her throat. But before the figure could step fully into view, the man stepped forward. "Stop," he commanded, voice sharp. The figure froze. Then, in a split second, the man revealed something Emma hadn't expected, a badge. He wasn't just a stranger. He was an investigator, tracking a larger operation targeting students like her, students struggling to get by. The tuition offer wasn't random. It was protection, a lifeline disguised as kindness. Emma stared, breathless. The danger was real, but so was the person who had chosen to help her, risking everything to give her a chance. Relief and shock collided, leaving her trembling. Just as she thought the worst was over, her phone vibrated in her pocket. A new message. She opened it, heart in her throat. You think you're safe? This is only the beginning. A friend you didn't know you had. Emma froze. The gift, the danger, the stranger. Nothing was as simple as she thought. And suddenly, she realized her life had been changed forever. Emma sat on the edge of the courtyard bench, still shaking, staring at her phone. The message burned like fire in her chest, but it no longer felt threatening. Somehow, it felt like a promise that the world still had people willing to step forward when others turned away. The man sat beside her, his presence calm, steady. You're safe, he said simply. It was almost ordinary, but in that ordinary reassurance, Emma felt an immense weight lift from her shoulders. For weeks, she had carried the stress of tuition, bills, and endless uncertainty. Now, someone had not only noticed her struggle, but had acted in a way she could never have imagined. She finally asked the question that had been gnawing at her since the day she bought that stranger's coffee. Why me? Why would you help a random student like me? He gave her a small, almost sad smile. Because sometimes, kindness reveals the people worth protecting. You didn't ask for help. You offered it. And that says more about who you are than anything else I could ever see. Emma's throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe, to let hope Indiana. She thought of her mother, working herself to exhaustion, and her little brother, who believed she could do anything. She thought of herself, weary but still standing, still willing to care for others even when it cost her everything. The tuition would be covered. Her future, fragile as it had seemed, was now a little more secure. But what stayed with her most wasn't the money. It was the reminder that one small act, a simple gesture of kindness, could set off a ripple that changed lives in ways she could never fully anticipate. The man stood, brushing off his coat. I have to go, he said, and Emma felt a pang of disappointment. But she nodded, understanding that he had his own role, his own mission. As he walked away, Emma realized she would never forget this morning, this week, this lesson. Life could be cruel, uncertain, and unfair, but it could also be astonishingly generous. And sometimes, the most unexpected encounters, even with strangers, held the power to alter your path entirely. Her phone buzzed one last time. A final message. Keep noticing the little things. That's where real change begins. Emma smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with coffee. She knew life wouldn't always be easy, and she would still face struggles, sleepless nights, and worries about the future. But now, she also knew that the world held surprises, that hope could arrive in the most unexpected forms, and that kindness, small, deliberate, human, was a force that could change everything. And as she walked back to class, her backpack light, her heart full, she couldn't help but wonder how many other lives were quietly waiting for someone to notice.